So, dear Gwendel, welcome and welcome everyone to another conversation about women and money. And you, my dear, are already on my wish list since a long time with this kind of conversation.
Good morning.
And why that? Because I think you have, and we'll come to that, we'll probably discover more about that in our conversation later, but my feeling was already when I met you the very first time that you have a certain natural inspiring power around your kind of entrepreneurship and the way you act as a woman in business and in well, everything. So yeah, you were on my wish list. So, and now let me quickly introduce first, for those who are listening for the very first time, what is this women and money thing? That comes or derives from my curiosity and my story about and relationship with money, which when I started my entrepreneurship was a very unrelaxed one with a lot of tension. And I realized I want to talk with women, because I'm a woman too, about how they relate to topics that are in the realm of money and finances and all the topics around that. That's also entrepreneurship. And Gwendel is a person who is an entrepreneur herself, just like me. I even have the luck to do a program together with her, the Mastermind for Positive Change, already since a year, which is a big learning journey, and I would say a success so far. You originally come actually by education from law. So you're originally a lawyer. You've been having quite impressive positions in all kinds of governmental official institutions like Rijkswaterstaat here in the Netherlands, now working at the gemeente Den Haag, so the community of The Hague. And while that, having also a family and managing your own business, which is Partner in Positive Change. So welcome, my dear. And I'd like to give you kind of the talking stick to maybe add to that introduction whatever needs to be said additionally to what I already said.
Well, thank you, Vera. Well, I don't have anything to add. Thank you for this introduction. And I'm very much interested also by the topic of women and money. I think these are inspiring times. And I've been watching your previous interviews, and I think it's very inspiring to learn from each other. Like, how did you do it? And I think it's also in this time with internet, and of course with a lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of entrepreneurs are rising up and starting their own business. So it brings a whole new way of working, and also power to the women, I would almost say, like no dependence, just start your own business and take care of yourself. So I really like that about this topic and about this time. Yeah,
I agree. And I would also add, and that is something that I actually only start to learn since a few days and weeks, is that women really can change things in how they operate with money, how they make their choices with money, whether it's entrepreneurship or whether it's in family and whether it's all that kind of stuff. And I would like to explore a little bit what that means for you and me in that relationship. And I would love to kick off our conversation about that with something that I learned in a chapter out of that book, The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist, where Lynn is sharing a story about a coaching client of her, friend maybe even, and colleague actually, where she tells a story actually about a woman who in different parts and phases of her life, always made decisions to live in community. So she a little bit flesh to the bones. She had a divorce. She had 2 beautiful children. She really was sad about the divorce and decided to visit a family in a befriended family in Japan. And out of this vacation, visiting, whatever, came 14 months of co-living, where they joined their qualities together. She, in her way of dealing with the children and her creativity and her, the way how she could create a warm, cozy household. And then moving back actually into the United States, starting her own business, but only part-time, again in community with someone else, sharing a house that she would otherwise not have been able to afford. And by that, providing actually for her children and the children of that other family, sufficiency and enoughness and actually abundance beyond the money. Because what Lynn is writing in that chapter is, she would be actually considered low or middle income. So it was kind of like $35,000 per year. That's not a lot. I don't know whether you can live with that actually in the Netherlands either very well. Well, you can, but it's more probably a surviving than really abundance. But I was so intrigued by that idea, how do we create enough? How do we create sufficiency? And I would love to hear your take on that.
I think personally that you can only have enough money if you feel enough from the inside. I think many people try to get a feeling of enoughness by compensating that with getting a lot of money or earning a lot of money, saving a lot of money, and maybe also buying a lot of stuff, so I think, and I've been doing some courses also, of course, on money and awareness, but also awareness on all kinds of topics. And I realized very much that for me, my mindset on money is there's always enough. And of course, that has to do with the place where I come from my childhood, and there was enough. And it wasn't that it's like it was excessive, but it was enough. And if I needed something what wasn't there, I have got the mental mindset, then there's a way to get it. So then you work, or then you create something, or you arrange it. And what I also learned is that there's this thing, if you work from a perspective of ownership, it's hard work, then because then you have to make a lot of money to buy it, to own it, and then ownership also costs a lot of money. So, but if you go from a place from sharing, and it's everything is there, it's already there. So then you can have the pleasure, enjoy it, but not own it, and still have the feeling of abundance. And that's a bit where I come from in terms of the mindset on money, I think. So having enough, being sufficient, or having sufficient also has to do, I really think, but do you feel sufficient for yourself? Or relax?
Can I jump right into what I see that, or I realized that my mind hangs with that. The 2 things that you're mentioning with regards to ownership and sharing, which then probably would be stewardship, maybe, to be translated, so steward, I'm taking care of what I have here. I make use of it for myself and for others, but it's not mine in the sense of I don't own it, which I find a very powerful kind of distinction that you make here. And I'm wondering, being a psychologist myself, where do you think we have that need to own things? Because I at least recognize it for myself as well.
It's first. The whole, I'm in different communities, in sharing communities, from houses to cars, clothes, and you can only share if you trust. Because if I don't trust people to come into my house on holiday, and they don't trust me to be in their house, you're never gonna exchange. If I don't trust the people who drive my car, I will not share. So I think the basics of sharing is trust, and you have to be able to trust. And well, that's the simple answer if you ask me, where it all comes back to. Yeah.
And why is that then not a kind of common understanding, you know?
Because we learn to distrust, we learn to own, we learn to, you know, the whole system is based on the things you own, and the things, everything's organized individually. You know, even if we like look at the taxes in Holland, if you share households, you get less tax reduction, for example, on things. So sometimes it's not, there's no incentive to share. You know, the incentive is to own. The more houses you own, the more discounts you get, you know, on taxes. So it's a system that stimulates individual and ownership. I think that's part of how it also works. People do what works.
I hear what you say, and I connect to that. And I'm also at that point right now where I'm like very hesitant to project it on something like the system. And of course, I'm aware there's a collective level, you know. I mean, we've been creating kind of a body of laws under which we all live here in the Netherlands, and then in the larger entity in the European Union. So I'm aware this exists and that influences us, but these systems are human made, you know.
Sure. Yeah,
they didn't kind of arise out of.
It's not something alien. It's ours. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm, you know, I mean, you know that I'm creating that online program, which with appreciative inquiry and the paradigm shifts. And one of the modules is actually it's about that topic. It's about how do we shift our economy from one which is largely driven right now by competition, by fear, by the idea that I may have to make you being in my depth, or I have to make sure that I'm not getting into depth, or I'm using the depth in which I am to get actually richer. So it's very much driven by that. And how do we move to something which is more based on trust, what you are saying right now? And on something which I would like to come back actually later with you as well, on the idea that I can do what I love and love what I do, because I think our economy is not driven by that in large parts until yet. So, and like preparing that module, I'm aware we have these collective systems which makes it sometimes hard, or which makes it hard for the individual to break out, or easy to say like, but I cannot do anything different. But it's I'm not ready to accept that answer anymore.
No, I agree, but still, I've learned, I think as a psychology, you can recognize that like people do what works, you know, they often, you know, so if you live in a community where it's normal to buy stuff because everybody has it, and we are like animals, you know, living in a group, and you know, they also found that if in a community, one person starts with new solar panels on the roof, within a year, the whole neighborhood has solar panels. So, you know, it's like, you know, people just copy what others do, what neighbors do. So there's this, and that's a very natural behavior. So people do what works to be accepted, to fit in. So, so if you do something what costs you money, which is not stimulated, it's a different movement you have to take, and it takes more effort than to follow, you know, this movement what everybody else does. So I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just if you ask me, like, how does it come that these things work and the system works? And I just think that it's the combination of how humans act, how we relate to each other, how we want to create a feeling of belonging, and that we follow, these incentives that stimulate us, and that's a normal thing. And then you create whatever we see right now. So and of course there are a lot of examples already where you can see communities rising, different styles of working together. And then you also see that you don't always need the money. You can have different different concepts of corporation. I worked for it was a startup, KDC Aandachtslab, which is a parent-driven initiative for handicapped children. And I saw there how parents can create this very official, very professional daycare center for handicapped children. I would say without money, with only volunteers, with money from the state for healthcare, all the money going directly to the healthcare. And we've been building, the whole building, with everything in it. There's even a garden and a playground, and now there's a pool, and it's all there. And so the money is also, we live in the Western world, sometimes I think like we have too much money here, There's money everywhere. You just have to find ways, to tap into that and to get it to your core, to your goals, to to get it and to invest it in the right way.
Yeah. You said two things in your answer, which I would love to connect and to build up on. You said one thing that I kept in mind. You said, like, it takes more effort to not follow what others do, not follow what the collective understanding is. And the second thing you just gave as an example for what you did actually without money. So there was not an incentive from the outside in creating that that center for handicapped children without any money involved, it came, but it was not the incentive for you to do that. And so my curiosity is, what do you think is making you specifically, and maybe even in general people, to think outside of these collective frameworks, possibilities, whatever, what made you kind of jump into that opportunity and to create something when even there was not guaranteed that there was money there?
Well, I think the only why you do it if there's this incentive from within. Like for me, at some point, I wanted to develop myself also outside of government into more healthcare, different sectors. So I wanted to learn, and I wanted to learn about community building, innovative ways of corporations. So that made me step in and donate my time and knowledge and experience into this center. So, and it was, of course, then it's like this exchange of my time, but I learned. So you have this exchange. It has nothing to do with money, but I got a lot out of it for me. So that's one thing. And then to relate on the other thing, as you said, like it takes more effort. I think what you before the effort comes the awareness. So it's I think also the awareness. At some point you start thinking like, what do I need? What makes me happy? How do I want to live my life? All these really important questions. And often people say like, oh, I have to work for money, or I have a mortgage to pay, or I want to do this and that. And then, well, for me, it's also that came at some point from within to say like, can I trust in me doing what I want and what I love to do, and do my own, follow my own route in that. So that made me also decide several times just to quit things, to quit work, to quit, a steady income. But also based that you can only do these things if you trust yourself, and if you trust that, for me, at some point I realized, like, I will never sleep one day on the streets. I will always have a roof above my head. I don't know if it will be my roof, if I would own the roof, but I will have a roof, I have family, I have friends. I will not end up on the street. And I also realized, like, I will never have hunger. I will never be hungry. My family will never be hungry. Like, we have family or friends. I trusted that even if we would go into hard times, or I wouldn't find anything else again, I was like, I'm not alone, So that trust in others and my community and the people around me. And I didn't even discuss that with them, of course. And I think I also would have put aside part of my ego, if I would have knocked on the door, like, could you please help me? I cannot afford my house or whatever, but I still would have done it. So the trust in the people around you and the awareness of what I want to do, what's important for me, that, starts this snowball effect, I would say. You start with the questions and you start acting, then you come from one thing to another, and it excels. And then, you come into the situation that you have to put more effort in it, because it comes from awareness, and then you go to places and you create things that nobody has created before. So you come into the situations that nobody knows about, and it goes from taxes and things that, combinations that everybody's like, oh, what, how is this possible? And like, that doesn't exist. Yes, it exists. I do this. So, help me. And then nobody knows, or you go places and say, no, that's not allowed. We have the law. And I'm like, I'm doing it anyway. So, you go into all these, and as a lawyer, I find it so interesting, And then I realized that was for me the reason to study law, because I wanted to understand this whole law system, but also to understand how, the loopholes in between, So I sometimes find it also, the joy in the sports to, do all these things, and, to
navigate through the little system. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, and that's a strange thing. And then a lot of is possible, because we have arranged a lot of things, how it should go. But if you do different, it's also possible, and maybe there are no laws about it, or it's not clear, or, that's all possible. And that takes the effort, because you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
But it's figure outable, but you have to figure it out. And that takes time and effort and, energy.
Yeah. When I was just listening to you, I was thinking, and that's an open question, but I know, the two of us have been also very much diving into these topics of what is feminine qualities and masculine qualities, and feminine energy and masculine energy. And you were just saying, at least when I understood you correctly, that you, at the moment you realized, I trust myself. I trust that I'll always have a roof above my head, because I'm not alone. I'm in community, I'll never fall so deep that me and my family have to suffer from hunger or suffer from homelessness or whatever. So that's what I would say is a very community conscious relationship thinking, and if you read a lot about entrepreneurship in the classical way, which is, I guess, has been, at least in the past decades, to a large extent done by men, or if we are learning about the tech industry, entrepreneurship's myths, how did it all happen, like back then in the garage, it's very much on this, I want to be on the top. I want to be on the leading edge. I'm accepting that I'm going to be alone, because I want to be at the top or at the forefront of things. So I don't want to actually be together with other people if they're not kind of my colleagues and employees, because that would mean that I would not be at the top. So I'm wondering right now whether there is a shift in general, whether it's really kind of about a typical masculine approach or a typical feminine approach, if there's something like that that exists like that. And of course, I'm aware there are also women that probably are motivated to that, and there are men who are motivated to be very much relationship oriented. I'm actually together with someone who is. So based on what I just said, give me a little bit what's coming up in you, please.
Well, I agree. Yeah, I think as you started before saying, like, we live in this very competitive world, and we have learned to be the best, and it starts with school marks. You have to be the best, and if you want to have a job, you have to be the best, and if you have to, so a lot of incentives, very subconsciously, but also very consciously, are in our society, in the way how we operate, how we stimulate each other, how it's in our education, it's in everything. So I think that's where we come from, and that gives, I think, a lot of lonely people, people who have distrust, won't ask for help, are depressed, burned out, feeling lonely. Not everybody, of course, but I think that's where you come from. And I think if you grow older and if you have a family, and well, then you realize you're not alone. You live in this community, but they haven't taught you how to operate in a community. We are, as I just said, we've been taught something different. So I think if you're talking about paradigm shifts, it's the thing we go to is from individuality to collectiveness, to group to community, and how to deal with that. And it starts also with, as I just said, like with trust, in the community. That's very sharply observed, as you said. But it's also accepting that you don't have everything and don't need to have or be able to do everything. Like, I think we often, we get this picture that we have to be able to do everything, ourselves. And we can't. I mean, I'm good at some stuff, and I'm really bad at most of the stuff, People who know me know that I cannot cook, if I cook, something burns, or cooks over. If I do shopping, I come back with everything I don't need, and everything I need, I forgot, So I have a lot of things I'm not so good at, but if you know what works for not only me, but for the collective, for the family, for the group, for the workplace, and you are very straight in, this is what I can contribute, this is what I can do, and this is what I can't do, and then you ask other people, then it's no big deal, because we're human, we all have some talents. So if you know in your talents is, I think, also basis of working together, so, and being clear in what you can do and can't do is also, well, that's also, again, maybe as you said, the female quality, maybe to say, like, vulnerability, like, I cannot do this, and we have to start appreciating that more, I think, I'm in this moment, I'm doing a lot of how do you say that, search for people, to work with us. And I was wondering, like, we are still asking people, like, what can you do? Where are you good at? And I was wondering, like, what if we should ask, like, this text, and not like we're looking for the best of this, and you should do this and this and that, and that we flip it around, and then we say, we are looking for people who cannot do this or that, who cannot yeah, if we already have somebody who communicates well, we are looking for people who cannot communicate. Are looking for people who cannot, do everything themselves, and then see whatever comes out, because then you have to think from places like, where do I rely on others? You have to be able to be dependent on others. And that feels quite scary because we are interdependent, all of us. And that's that is a different mindset, and it might, well, from a leadership perspective, you also look like all these different people, and you want them to use each other, in a positive way, and to become more in a group, that all the individuals together become like this excellent performing team.
Yeah.
And it only starts if you depend on each other, and if you trust each other, but also can really rely on each other. And I think that's something, we can stimulate more in education, in community, and, in how we grow also children, and,
Yeah. I'm exactly where you are. I'm thinking right now, I mean, when I think back of how I entered the work market, I finished my education. I think I was 26 because I took lots of gap years. But so I was relatively old. But I started I remember writing my first application letters, and all of a sudden I had to share what I was capable of. I mean, I did, number one, I did not even know what was
most people
needed.
don't know.
I had
They
no clue
what they
whatsoever.
don't know.
Exactly. I knew what I didn't know. I thought there are things that I need to improve, but what I knew, I don't know, So, and I mean, the way we are writing application letters is by telling us like, I'm the coolest, take me, So, and it's also, I don't know, at the end, I wrote a few also really authentic application letters where I thought like I can see myself in that, but it's, we have like basically what I want to say is like, before people come to you reading what you want to have, they've gone through so many iterations of understanding that they have to put up a certain image that might not feel authentic, that they have to promote what they already know. So when I hear you saying that, which I find actually a charming idea, so like, we want people who don't know how to do blah blah blah, like who don't know it all. That's such a shock probably for people, because we're just not used to that kind of thinking.
Mm-hmm. And what I find so interesting, like in these days, we are dealing with complex problems on a local level, on a global level.
Yeah.
I find in my work, like, as long as we think we know, and we come from a place that we think we should know, we're not going to find the answer, because we have to be able to stay with this uncomfortable feeling with, I don't know, and I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out, or it's going to come, or who do I need, and that's what you need. We don't need people who know it, because if you're going to repeat whatever has been done in the past, we're not going to get there anymore.
It's really, actually, we need to realize that not knowing is going to be our step into a new paradigm.
That's interesting. You just said about the entrepreneurs. There's so many entrepreneurs. Also, like, I think like Steve Jobs and many people who are dropouts of school. The big advantage of being a dropout, not having school, but using your, they would say, in Dutch, je boerenverstand, just to think, like logically, and to think things through, is that you feel free and not limited, because in our education is so much, things are already, also guided, there's so many constraints in our thinking, in our education, that we will not find the answers. So sometimes not having an education is a big pro, and that's where it starts. Well, all the people I'm looking for in the organizations, they often say, no, we need to have university schooled people. And then There's no strategic diversity. You have all these people going to the Dutch schooling system and they all think exactly the same. And there's no diversity because they all think alike. You're not going to find a solution by that.
So I asked the entrepreneur in you, how are you dealing with that?
So being a lawyer with a Dutch degree, I feel very limited sometimes, I can tell you. You know?
No, but asking you as an entrepreneur right now, how are you going to deal with that?
Well, for me, like how I deal with it, I have 3 times a year, I have this retraite or 3 days of reflection. Because I've learned also with the different several sabbaticals I took that it's important to move, to keep moving and to keep feeling like, am I still on the right track? So for me, it helps to have like steady and every, 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, depends, to have like 3 days, I go to a hotel or to the woods and just to look back, to write down, to make new goals, and also to feel all the uncomfortable things. And like we've been talking about paradigm shifts, and one of the you can only move as a person into a paradigm, because I don't want to make it too big and too general. Paradigm shift is within you, within me. It's a choice we made. It's something we were used to, a choice we used to make. Like, for me on this point, I'm into this nobody's land on holidays. My or family joy is traveling. But we do not feel comfortable anymore with flying too far and too often at all, actually, because of the CO2, exhaust, and with the climate change. So what to do? We don't know. It feels uncomfortable. We feel sad because if you're not going to fly, and how are we going to do that? So a lot of questions, and we don't know. So we are in the we don't know phase. And maybe something else comes out. So, and it's also with work. You start with some point that you say, I don't know what I want to do. That's fine. That's step one. You don't know. Good for you. You don't know, And then you go to, okay, at some point you figure out what you do know, what you do want to do. So you need to, I don't know, phase to get into a different paradigm, to make new choices. And I think that's what I need, is just time to reflect on that regularly, to make new choices that fit my lifestyle, to adapt my lifestyle, I would say. So you can move, because if you don't do that, you keep repeating what you always do. And and there the collective thing, how do we do things, comes in, because I'm asked, with friends, oh, let's go there, and then we go by plane, and we go a weekend there, and we do this cool stuff, and we do, and I think, oh yeah, that's cool. And then secondly, I think, oh no, I don't feel comfortable actually. But how do I communicate that with friends? I do want to see them, but I don't want to do that, and if they don't feel the same, it's confronting, because then you're with this biology, human thing. I want to belong, and need my friends, and every community stuff, So you have to work through that as an individual. And then you need time to be comfortable with you, to be able to make a different choice. I think that's how it works for me.
Yeah. I love what you say. And I love about that you bringing this idea, which I think goes always back also, that comes back in entrepreneurship, like nearly daily, well, maybe every week, this kind of, I'm uncomfortable with that,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's why entrepreneurship has such a steep learning curve, because it's like in your face all the time,
Next step. Yeah,
next step. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that you say that. And I think it's also like bringing back also the topic of money, which we are actually in that whole series talking about. It always is also this, this not knowing, this discomfort on about, am I going to follow that strategy because someone else has done it, but it doesn't feel comfortable actually with me. So how am I going to tell it? How am I going to be comfortable with not making that much money because I made that decision that I'm not going to follow that strategy? You know, always comes back. It always, and I think it takes a lot of courage.
That's interesting, yeah, because there are a lot of, if you look at, I mean, on Instagram, there are a lot of courses. How do I make 1 million? How do I, earn more? How do I sell? It's passive income, all these things.
Yeah.
But the question, of course, always is like, how much do you need?
Yeah.
And what is the need? And that need is different for everyone. And if you have your values clear and you know what's important in life, then you can, put a number on it. And even then, that's a question like, how are you going to arrange it? For example, like I've worked with the government and as an entrepreneur, so regularly I have a lot of holidays. And I always thought like, I have too many free days, from then the money I have to take the family, traveling. So that made us realize that, hey, we do want to travel like 10 years ago. So we decided to do the home exchange, to change houses for free. So choosing, our goal was clear. We wanted to be together as a family, traveling new cultures, but we didn't have the money for it. But you could say, okay, then we don't go. Or you say, okay, how do we realize this? So that made us choose for a home exchange. So you make choices, and in these choices, it's always a choice: do I own it, or do I share it, or are there other ways how to create it? And I think a lot of people, they say, yeah, I would like to do this, but then I need so much money. And then I'm like, is that so? Is that true? Or is that, let's say the mind fuck, like you need money because that's what you've taught, because you have to buy it.
It's I think you're or at least in my head, you're putting a very interesting point there, in the sense that we think, and in our economy it actually works like that as well. The question is whether it's going to be really satisfying then at the end. We think with money we can buy everything. With money I can buy to allow my family to travel. True. Yeah. With money I can buy whatever, you were talking about needs. And I think we very often think that we can really satisfy our needs by having enough money to satisfy them. But it's a shortcut to think that, because I think what most needs are tied up to are healthy, high quality relationships with a lot of trust. So we think we can kind of shortcut the long-term relationship work that needs to be done in order to have a satisfied life by having enough money to buy that.
Yeah, and then the thing is with money is you have this, and then there's something else coming, and then you have it, and then you make something else up, and it never ends. It's this, rupsje nood genoeg. It's the,
Yeah. In German we have the same. It's die kleine Raupe nimmer satt. I don't know if the
one,
little,
exactly.
would it be
what I find so interesting, I want to share, like I have periods in my life that I made a lot of money, and I have periods in my life that I make no money.
Yeah.
And what I also find so interesting, that in the periods of time that I made no money or very less money, I was very happy, because too much money makes your life comfortable, because there's a lot of choice, and choices give stress, because they have to choose what I'm going to do with the money, So if you don't have money, of course, there's a difference between no money and a little, obviously you need to have enough money to have your safety in your house and your food and stuff. Okay. So I'm not talking about being broke and everything,
again, sufficiency.
Sufficiency.
Yeah.
In those times, I just knew, like, I'm not going to buy clothes. I'm just going to do, wear whatever I have. Or I have to, share and trade with my friends. In these times, we know we're not traveling, because there's not enough. So we don't have to think and look online for hours to figure out what to do. So there's a lot of time. You know, you don't have to think where we're going out for dinner because you don't have money to go out for dinner. So it's very simple, you know. And for me, that was the realization in these times that too much money actually gives also exhaustion of your own energy, because with money also comes almost like this, I don't know if it's a responsibility or a trigger to also to spend it or to do something with it, you know, or to invest it. And you have to think about investment, and you know, it's something that asks for, yeah, you have to think about it, you have to do something about it, you know. And of course it's nice, you know, if you can put it away and do stuff at a certain point, but there's this, well, that's how I experienced it, that more money literally doesn't make it always better, you know, because most of the, for your basic life, have a very valuable life, you know, with good relationships, doing the things you love, being with the people you love, and having time. That's for me the biggest asset, the biggest value in life, you know, to have time. Yeah, you don't need so much money for that. You know, that was my big insight, actually. So yeah,
it's nearly a little bit, it feels also as a kind of good transition point to come to an end of our conversation, because it's a little bit like what the Buddha says, that any attachment creates suffering. And if you have the money, you suddenly have to think about how to invest that money, you know, like, so it creates this kind of I have to do, and then we're in the hamster wheel of more, or whatever, you know. So it's yeah, wise words, dear Gwendel.
yeah. Thank you.
I would like to close off that conversation with asking you for advice for women and men and people who don't identify as women or men, who might listen to that conversation, on how they can get into doing what they love and loving what they do and being paid for.
For me, and that's from my experience, every time over and over again, it starts with building trust within yourself. So time to reflect for yourself, you know, what's important. Because I think from, you know, if you already embody it and you feel it and you grow trust on it, the step in doing something different is much easier. So she's saying, do it and try it and learn. That's the too big step sometimes, you know, because it's too fearful if you have to let go all of your securities. So I really think it's about building trust in yourself.
How do you do that? How are you doing that for yourself?
I do a lot of personal development continuously. So, and also, as I just shared, you know, time to reflect. Because I think collectively we walk away from a lot of pain, you know, and then we turn around it and don't really deal with things and let it be. It's just to dig into the pain, into the trauma, into the past, and to heal stuff and to, you know, do the work you need to do for yourself. And then you can move past it.
So basically,
that's how it was for me.
Yeah, basically, when I hear you right, tending to your own needs, tending to your own pain, healing it, and then gaining the trust that you can heal yourself actually out of that experience that you did.
Yeah. I think that's I think that's the most important thing if you would ask me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Vera.
Conversation.
Nice having this conversation with you. You always get with questioning me, I'm like, and then things come out I didn't really realize before sometimes.
My pleasure. Yeah. Well, I look forward to our next conversation and mastermind session. Little advertisement block. Before we stop. Well, right now you can't join us, unfortunately, because we just started with our 4th cohort. But if you want to join Gwendel and me in our mastermind, there is every 5 months the opportunity to join us, and the next one will be in February. So
2022.
2022. True. Good did you say that?
So, all right.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.